So this is Gary again with Helm of Sun Valley in San Mateo, California. Today I want to talk about Zipfit liners. So to go over the history of flow liners, Lang first started using flow in the late 60s. Those were extremely popular boots. Nordica used it in their high-end boots throughout the 70s, and many other boot companies also had flow in their high-end boots. Then it kind of went away because flow is a expensive liner to produce. Much more expensive than your typical stock liner that's in most boots now. But it did remain in the highest levels of race boots from the 70s all throughout the 80s, 90s, and even now. You can still find flow in the highest level race boots. Zipfit was developed by Sven Kummer, a guy named Sven Kummer, who actually worked for Nordica Boots way back in the early 70s and 80s. He actually lived over here in San Mateo when Nordica was being distributed out of Brisbane, up here north of us. So that's kind of a interesting local connection. He's been in the ski industry for ages. He originally started Superfeet footbeds, which many skiers and runners are familiar with. He sold that company and then started Down Under Footbed, which is also a fairly popular footbed company. He also owned Footloose Ski Shop in Mammoth, California for many years. It was one of the high-end, well-known boot fitting shops in the country. And he still owns Zipfit. And what essentially Zipfit is a flow type of liner. Think of silly putty. When you push on it, it physically moves and takes the shape of whatever's pushing on it. So essentially you put your foot in there, and the flow material moves and takes the shape of your foot. The flow material is in this section of the boot on both sides and completely up and down the tongue. The other materials that are in all of the Zipfit liners are neoprene in the tongue area, and then inside there is lamb's wool throughout the toe area, making it very warm too. And then the flow material is actually chopped cork in a gooey, sticky matrix. And that cork is also an excellent insulator, so this is a very warm liner also. The other advantage one of the major advantages of this type of liner is that you can try it on in your shell before you're fully committed to it and see what it's going to feel like. A lot of times with other custom moldable products, you don't have that option. Once you custom mold it to your foot, it's yours, and you won't know what it's like until you're done with it and you're fully committed to those liners. With this one, put your foot in there, you wear it around a while, and you can see what it's going to be like. Some people know within 15 minutes that it's the best fit they've ever had. And in most cases, it takes a little while longer for the flow to fully form to your foot. And Zipfit says it takes one full day of skiing to really form to your foot. But most people know that they love this liner within a fairly short period of time. It comes essentially in 4 different models. This happens to be the World Cup. This is the Grand Prix, which is probably the most popular. And this is the Diva, and then they also make another one called the Gara. The essential differences between the Grand Prix, World Cup, and Gara is how much flow material is in the boot. So the one with the most flow material is the Grand Prix. World Cup has 20% less, and then the Gara has even less. And essentially, how do you choose those? Well, it really comes down to your foot volume and your shell shape. So if you have a high volume, thick foot, and that boot is relatively tight, you're probably going to choose a liner that might be a little bit thinner to accommodate that thick foot. If you have, let's say, a medium volume shell and a really skinny low volume foot, you're going to choose something like the Grand Prix, which is going to help fill up those voids in your foot. So those are essentially the differences. And then the Diva, which is the women's liner, has some cutouts back here, a little lower calf, a little bit more flexible calf area to accommodate a woman's lower calf on her leg. It has about the same flow volume as a Grand Prix. So one of the beauties of, another beauty of the Zipfit liner is that you can add or subtract flow to the liner. Essentially it has 3 little ports here where I can take this gun, and that's the actual flow material right here, and it works kind of like a caulking gun, and I can inject more flow into the liner if for some reason it's too loose or it does pack out. So that's one of the great things about all of the Zipfit liners. The flow material is essentially this gooey chopped cork in kind of a sticky matrix. One of the misconceptions about this cork material is that it hardens or something like that. It doesn't harden. In 10 years from now, if you were to sell your liner to someone else, or if you got a different shell, it would readapt to that shell or that different person. If you injured your foot, sprained your ankle, and you had a different shaped foot now, it would remold to your new foot. Whether it's 15 minutes from now or whether it's 10 years from now, it will continue to mold. It doesn't change its shape by itself. Some people have the misconception that somehow it changes shape when there's over the summer. Doesn't do that at all. It takes pressure for this to move. It won't move by itself. But whenever you put pressure on it, if someone else would put their foot in your boot, it would mold to their foot. So some people ask, what are the laces for? And laces for a couple different things. It can be used to get in and out of your boot a little differently than you're used to. And essentially what you do is you lace it onto your foot and then step right into the shell. It can be a great way to get into a stiff boot or for people to have difficulty getting into that boot. And if you warm your shell up in a hot gear bag, a hot boot bag, which is another phenomenal product that we sell here at Helm, you warm your shell up overnight, it makes the plastic of the shell like rubber, soft rubber. It steps in really easy. One of the misconceptions that people have about this liner is that you have to use heat to make it flow to your foot, and that's more or less incorrect. The flow material will flow at 100 degrees, it will flow at 50 degrees, it will flow at 32 degrees. It's just at those lower temperatures, it just flows a little slower. So the technique that we use, that Zipfit advocates, is somehow getting heat into the flow material, and usually we do that by heating the shell of the foot. That transfers heat into the flow material, and that just lowers the viscosity of the flow inside and makes it flow faster to your foot. It will flow at room temperature. It just takes longer for it to flow. And then the material on the outside here is somewhat thermomoldable also, and when we do use heat, this outside material will conform to all the curvatures and rivets and all the other stuff that's on the interior of a boot. And that helps lock the liner into place inside the shell. So at the end of a day, of a cold day, a lot of times we all know that taking off your ski boot can be a real pain in the you-know-what. So Zipfit liners with that lace in the liner offer a really great way to get out of your boots that's far less painful. Essentially, you just grab the back of the shell, lean your knee forward a little bit, and just take the boot, pop it off like that. Then unlace the liner. Simple as that, super easy, great way to get out of your boots. So once we've selected the liner that we're going to use, we just take the shell, put it into this special convection oven, turn it on, and we want to get the shell up to right around 200 degrees. And 200 degrees is not going to change the shell in any way, but it's going to transfer that heat energy into the liner, and again lower the viscosity of the flow in there and allow it to move around your foot a little bit faster. Plus it also heats up the material on the outside of the liner, which then will conform to the inside of the shell. So we can determine the temperature of the shell using this laser thermometer detection device. It's really nifty. And once it reaches right around 200, we're ready to go. Just take the shell out of the oven. Make sure it's unbuckled. and then step right in to the shell, just like that. Then go ahead and buckle it up. Then once we've got it buckled up, we're just going to walk around, do a little flexing. The more movement we can put into the shell, the better. The quicker the quicker the flow is going to move around. And then we're done. You've got one of the best fitting boots on the market now.